Like father, like son is an old phrase used to describe how powerful parents are in being role models for their children. For many of us, we have looked up to our parents' example in some way and have used it to shape our lives. In fact, research shows that there seems to be a distinct line of resemblance between one generation to the next. Children of incarcerated parents are more likely to grow up and go to prison just like their parents. This pattern of intergenerational crime, or crime that runs from the parent to the child, is mostly explained through the argument, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. This is quite striking because at least 10 million children have experienced a parent going to prison. The research undertaken in my PhD sought to examine the underlying mechanism between a parent going to prison and a child walking in a similar pathway. I utilized a national sample of youth. I matched youth who experienced a parent going to prison to youth who did not. I wanted to see whether the expectations from their parents and caregivers was the underlying difference on how these two would end up. I hypothesized that the expectations from parents and caregivers on how their youth would end up mattered in how youth would see themselves and ultimately how they would go on to commit crime in future years. You see, for example, imagine that you are presented, and how well you would do for the presentation is based on how everyone is looking at you and responding to you. You see, we often perceive ourselves the way that others perceive us. Within my study, I found support for this process. Youth who experienced a parent going to prison had parents and caregivers who are more likely to expect them to commit a crime by their adulthood. These youth reflected on their parents' and caregivers' expectations and took them as their own. Youth's perceptions on how they would end up just like their parents was based heavily on parents' expectations and their caregivers' expectations. So what does this all mean? It is possible that the future of our youth, especially for those who have experienced a parent going to prison, can be predicted through the expectations of those with whom they live with, such as their parents and caregivers. If we can change the way in which these youth perceive themselves, then maybe we can change the cycle of going to prison. You see, the simplified story that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree is not entirely clear. Maybe, just maybe, we need to take a deeper look and begin to read between the lines. Thank you.